everyone, and welcome back to MFTV. I'm Karolyn, and I'm dropping in today to share a process video for a project that I created for the May 2020 release. And it features the adorable Gnome Place like Home Die-namics, the Hanging with My Gnomies stamp set, and the Woodgrain Whimsy 6x6 paper pack. I used the Pear Blossom Press Easy Lights to light up the windows of the gnome home. These lights make it so incredibly easy that you won't believe your eyes. So let's get started. Off camera, I trimmed a 5 1/4 inch by 4 inch panel of Limelight cardstock, and I die cut it using the Grassy Die-namics to create 2 levels of grass. I stamped the sentiment from the Hanging with My Gnomies stamp set onto the front piece of grass using Sweet Tooth pigment ink, and then I heat embossed it with white embossing powder. I adhered the 2 layers of grass together with thin 3D foam squares. I die cut all the pieces of the Gnome Place like Home Die-namics from Smooth White, Limelight, Summer Splash, Lemon Drop, and Raspberry cardstock, and I'm adhering the pieces together with my liquid glue pen. This is probably the most time-consuming part of this card, so I sped the camera up. The nice thing is that the gnome home has embossed lines, so you know exactly where to place each piece. I should also mention that there were a few decorative pieces of the Gnome Home Die-namics that I didn't use on this project, but are great details to make this sweet gnome home even more adorable. Also, I die cut the gnome home die from a piece of the Woodgrain Whimsy 6x6 paper pack, and since I only wanted the stem of the roof, I used my scissors to trim that portion off. I am so in love with this adorable gnome home and am so excited for the possibilities that it holds for future projects. If you want some inspiration to make your own gnome home, Pinterest is full of ideas for color schemes and details when you do a search for garden fairy or gnome homes. I literally got lost in the cuteness of all of the darling places for magical creatures to live on Pinterest, and finally decided on this bright and simple color scheme. If your creativity doesn't explode at the possibilities for this gnome home, then I'm afraid nothing will. For me, it's just too cute for words and inspires all kinds of magical places in my head. I can't wait to execute them in real life. Okay, in order for the lights to show through, I've trimmed a piece of yellow vellum that I had in my stash. I'm applying some liquid glue to the back of the assembled gnome home, and I'll adhere the vellum to cover the window openings. Now that my pieces are all assembled, I need to attach the easy lights behind the gnome home, but I want to hide all of the wires and push button mechanism behind the scenes. So I've temporarily positioned the pieces onto a 5 1/4 inch by 4 inch panel of Summer Splash cardstock, and then I've placed the gnome home die on top. I'll carefully remove the pieces behind the die, and I'll secure it in place with a piece of washi tape and die cut it off camera. I've placed the Aperture Summer Splash panel onto a 4 1/4 inch by 11 inch smooth white card base that I've scored at 5 1/2 inches, folded in half, and perfected the crease with my Teflon bone folder. I'm marking the outside edge of the panel with my pencil to give me an idea of the space that I have to work with, and then I've placed the die cut back into the aperture, and I'm marking the window openings. The Pear Blossom Press Easy Lights come with everything you need, including the batteries, to light up your projects, and come in packs of 1, 3, or 5 light sets. No more copper wire, finicky lights that sometimes work and sometimes don't. The genius behind these lights is honestly my superhero, and I'm happy to report that MFT carries them in their store. I snapped out the light set that I want, and I've placed the supplied battery into the slot with the plus side up. To adhere the press button mechanism to my card base, I've applied some 1/4 inch double-sided tape to the back, remove the liner paper, and I'll adhere it to the card base inside the lines that I marked with my pencil. Since all of the wiring and mechanism will be hidden behind the gnome home panel, I don't have to take great care to make everything look pretty. But I do want to make sure that the lights shine inside the window openings. You can see that you get plenty of wiring, but since I don't need this much, I'll just wind the excess up, and I'll make sure that the lights are left free. I'll secure the excess wire in place with a piece of Scotch tape. Then I'll manipulate the 3 lights so that the lights are facing up and in position behind the window openings. I'll secure all 3 lights in place with more small pieces of Scotch tape. Yes, it takes a bit of time to get everything in place, but honestly, I couldn't ask for an easier way to light up my projects. It's about as idiot-proof as you can get, and I think we all know that idiot-proof is my jam. And now that the lights and mechanism are in place, a quick push on the button shows me that it's all in working order. It's idiot-proof, I tell ya. I've adhered 2 layers of foam squares to the back of the Summer Splash aperture panel, and I'll adhere it to the card base using the pencil markings that I made earlier. You really need 2 layers of foam squares to allow good clearance for the mechanism. I want the gnome home to pop off the page dimensionally, so I've added 3 layers of foam squares to the back of the gnome home, and I'll secure it inside the aperture. And again, when I press on the area of the panel near the mechanism button, you can see how the lights shine through the windows. I've added some thin 3D squares to the back of the assembled grass die cuts, and I'll adhere them to the panel, sliding the bottom of the gnome home between the 2 layers. Next, I wanted to add something to the panel that would draw the recipient's eye to the mechanism button. So I assembled 2 of the mushrooms from the Gnome Place like Home Die-namics, and I'm adhering them in place with liquid glue. I'll use a grass die cut to cover the bottoms of the mushrooms. In hindsight, I wish that I'd stamped a word prompt to make sure that the recipient knows to push the mushrooms to make the lights light up, but I didn't want to mess it up, so I decided against it. Let's hope that the recipient of this cutie patootie card is smarter than me. As a final detail, I added some clouds to the background using the Cute Cloud Outlines Dynamics and some smooth white cardstock. I'm adhering 2 of the clouds with liquid glue and the 3rd cloud with a thin 3D foam square. This project ultimately ended up being a pretty clean and simple design, but you could add as much or as little detail as you want to create your own magical gnome home. You could add lots of greenery and a darker background to create a little forest for your gnomes. Honestly, the possibilities are endless. Here's one last look at my project. I hope you enjoyed my video and that you'll create your own magical light-up gnome home for yourself. I've listed and linked all of the MFT products that I used below. Be sure and subscribe to the MFT YouTube channel so that you don't miss any of the crafty goodness that we share here on a regular basis. Thanks for watching and have a great day.